Clumsy Joe, Clumsy Joe. He's the clumsiest guy that I know. Clumsy Joe, Clumsy Joe. He's the clumsiest guy that I know. He falls out of bed and hits his head, and he's bleeding all over the place. Then he goes and gets a towel, and he wipes the blood off his face. And he goes and gets a bandage and takes off the adhesive and puts the bandage right over the wound. Then he sits on the toilet, but then he ends up on the floor. He gets up to brush his teeth, but his toothbrush goes up his nose. This is how the story goes for poor old Clumsy Joe. Clumsy Joe, Clumsy Joe. He's the clumsiest guy that I know. Clumsy Joe, Clumsy Joe, Clumsy Joe. He's the clumsiest guy that I know. He goes downstairs to the kitchen. Then he goes and gets his cereal and milk. Then he gets his bowl, drops it on the floor. His bowl is broken in half. Then he goes and gets another bowl. And he pours his cereal and milk on the counter. And then, finally, he pours his cereal and milk in the bowl. And then takes it to the table. And then he spills it all over the table. And then the story goes, it's everything he knows. Clumsy Joe, Clumsy Joe. He's the clumsiest guy that I know. Clumsy Joe, Clumsy Joe, Clumsy Joe, Clumsy Joe. It's the clumsiest guy that I know. He goes to work, gets out of his car, and then he walks into the building, hitting his head on the door frame and giving himself a headache. Then he sits down in his cubicle, but the wall falls down, and then sits at the computer, but the computer burst into flames. And then he goes to his car, but he found out he locked his keys in the car. Waited an hour for AAA to open his car door. Everything that can go wrong will for poor old Clumsy Joe. Oh, oh. Clumsy Joe, Clumsy Joe. He's the clumsiest guy that I know. Clumsy Joe, Clumsy Joe, Clumsy Joe, Clumsy Joe. He's the clumsiest guy that I know. He drives home, but then he gets into an accident in his driveway. He hits his other car, and he's injured his leg. The ambulance comes, puts him in the back, but they forget to strap him in, so the gurney rolls down the street, and it stops on the corner, and they put him back in the ambulance, then they go right to the hospital. They don't know what to do, 'cause it's the worst hospital in town. This is what happens to old Clumsy Joe. Clumsy Joe, Clumsy Joe. He's the clumsiest guy that I know. Clumsy Joe, Clumsy Joe, Clumsy Joe, Clumsy Joe. He's the clumsiest guy that I know. Ooh. He gets in the hospital and in a bed, but the bed folds in half. And then they unfold him, find out he's in cardiac arrest. And for the third time in a year, they had to save him. They save him, but all we know is his name is all over the hospital walls. Clumsy Joe, Clumsy Joe. He's the clumsiest guy that I know. Clumsy Joe, Clumsy Joe. He's the clumsiest guy that I know. Clumsy Joe, Clumsy Joe, Clumsy Joe, Clumsy Joe. He's the clumsiest guy that we know. Clumsy Joe, Clumsy Joe, Clumsy Joe. He's the clumsiest man in the whole wide world. Clumsy Joe, Clumsy Joe, Clumsy Joe. He's the clumsiest guy that we know. Clumsy Joe, Clumsy Joe, Clumsy Joe. He's the clumsiest guy that we know. Clumsy Joe.